Ooh, I'm not gonna lie. This takes me back. Holy Dinah, this takes me
Mm.
back. Shout out to Amateur Analyst. Like I posted it on Twitter. Like this is how Diabolical Souls all began. Watching this intro just gave me goosebumps because it was like one of my first editing like intros, and man, that's a flashback. So all that being said, welcome to the review of season 1 of Arcane. And we're going to do a quick recap. Well, not quick, but we're going to do a recap. We're going to dive into the characters, dive into the storyline, talk about everything that's going on. But before we do that, if everyone could just, hit that like button, that'd be greatly appreciated. Leave a comment would be even better. Hit that little notification bell. That's for you, Badger. And of course, share the stream out and get people in here and watching with us. That'd be awesome. We got, we got 45 people watching right now. That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Gooch. And this guy over here is Niet. And how's it going, buddy? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. It's been some time since I watched Arcane, and yeah, yesterday I just flew right through every episode, had a great time, and it just reminded me so much of what made the show so special. The writing, the animation, the characters are phenomenal, and it's one of the best shows of 2021, if not the best show for me.
Yeah, it is. It is an amazing, amazing story, amazing animation, and we're going to dive right into it. Leon, my friend, how are you? How are you excited to do this season 2 after like next week? Because this weekend, season 2 is released on Saturday, actually, the 9th. So that's why we're doing this. But Leon, how are you doing, bud?
You have no idea how excited I am to do this because you are literally the sole reason I watched this show. I didn't watch
Yeah.
it when it came out. I didn't give a shit about it because I was not a League player, and I was like, why would I watch something from an IP I'm not a fan of when I could be watching Dragon Ball or Pokemon or something that I am a fan of? And frankly, I always thought League was one of those weird things in nerd culture that just never grabbed me. And you were like, I almost say pestering, like in a fun, friendly, bantering way, but pestering me to watch. And so I was like, all right, fine, whatever. I'm gonna sit down, go with my buddy. I'm gonna watch one episode, see what's up. And I hate binge watching. I want to make it clear to people. I loathe binge watching. So when I say I sat and watched all 8 episodes in one sitting, and then 2 days later rewatched it all again, I literally only have you to thank for this and your tenacity in saying, Leon, quit being retarded and watch this great show. And now here I am getting to be part of the review of it, and it's kind of surreal. And yeah, so I'm excited. Thank you so much.
No, it's good to have you on. And Mr. Goodwin, we're going to be diving into some of the animation stuff, like how it was processed, how it was done. And I love talking this jargon with you. But how are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm
Your
ready
thoughts?
to get Gucci. Let's go. I mean, this show, I didn't play League. I was aware of its existence, which is one of the reasons I didn't play League. But I think the first time that I became aware of Arcane, other than just seeing it pop up on Netflix, and I was like, nope, I'll skip that. And then EPAP was doing coverage of that, and they were all very impressed. They were kind of going through just how well put together this was, and I was like, all right, I'll see it to whatever. The beauty of the animation and the storytelling that they do visually is matched by the writing and the characterization they do. And then, when you guys did the coverage episode by episode, I was in on all of those, right, in chat, asking questions, banging back and forth. It's probably the best thing that Netflix has done, period. Now, to be fair, they didn't have a lot of involvement in it, right? It was Riot and Fortiche that really did all the hard work. But I mean, it is an absolute banger. And yeah, I rewatched it over the last 2 days with my wife, and it hasn't aged at all. It's perfect.
Mm-hmm. And I remember you in the chat because that was that's how we were in a lot of chats together, but I remember seeing you in the chats. And yeah, this is like a lot of nostalgia for me because like it's this is how my channel grew. We started doing this stuff, and then we have someone that actually played the game. Nick, you played the game and you've watched the series. Your thoughts and welcome, and looking forward to you joining us for the reviews.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me. And yeah, this was definitely a surprise a few years ago when it came out, and definitely hit some nostalgic points for me because having played League for a number of years back in like 2009 till like maybe 2013, 2014, I want to say, having known a lot of the lore that exists with each of the characters, like the different factions, and just seeing them come out with this and expand on the lore. I won't use a certain phrase that starts with a W and B for someone in the chat, but
Do it.
good old world building. But this is great. I think shows sometimes struggle when they're trying to do something that takes place in the past, and show how you get to a certain point that we know in the future, or maybe in the present day. But they did a great job, and obviously the animation itself was so different too that it was a little shocking. And I think it took a little bit to get used to at the time, but rewatching it all over again was definitely more appealing, I think, the second time. Like I was very much in tune with it because it reminded me a lot of Valorant from Riot as well. And I've played Valorant as well, so it's got like a very similar type of animation that they've been using in that game, like we see in Arcane. So
that's awesome. I'm we're gonna ask questions throughout this, but
okay.
way back in January, this gentleman joined, and he spent time on this channel, and I'd like to call him a friend, but the man across the pond, Platoon, how are you doing, bud? How are you feeling? Thanks for joining. I appreciate you a ton. You know that. It's kind of a throwback. It's like almost a year since we've reviewed this.
I know, doesn't time fly? Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Always good to be here. Looking forward to doing season 2. It'll be good fun.
Yes. How are you feeling? Like, I know you've been busy. You've been crazy busy. How are you feeling? How you doing? I'm really excited for you to join and talk about this, because like there's so much that I learned from you and Cynic. Like it just seems like yesterday, but it was like almost a year ago. And it's kind of like I'm just having like a moment here. Like it's like because it's because I Amateur reached out to me, like we were talking, catching up. He's doing really doing well, and it's just kind of like, wow, this week is just kind of like member berries for me. So
I know, it's great, and about a good show as well. So it's not even as though we're getting back together to reminisce about something we all remember hating. It's actually, this is one of the best things to have come
You
out
can
of the
say
last
Rebel
few
Moon
years.
soon. It's fine.
No, I forgot about that one. Yeah, there's a reason we're not reminiscing about that.
No trauma bonding. We don't want the trauma bonding.
Thanks for joining there, bud. I always
anytime. Thank you.
Well, let's say a quick hello to everyone in the chat before we get started into this. Anthony was the first one here. What's happening? Thanks for joining us, bud. Leon, man, thanks, bro. 5 Gucci gang memberships. I appreciate that.
Badger's not here to one up me, so I figured, let's do it early.
You don't never say never. Yeah. Thank you, bud. We got the lovely Sherry here. Thank you for joining us, Sherry. Appreciate you. Nos. I've got to love Nos. Nos is here. I love Gooch more than life itself. Oh boy. Nos. Rio, what's up? Hey, what's up? Jim Harrison. Jana. What's up, Jana? Thanks for joining us. Jim, thanks for joining us. Sorry. Rachel, what's up, girl? Thanks for joining us. We got let's go. Gemma was one of the first ones, the OGs that joined us when we first did this. So what's up, Gemma? And hopefully we have the other OGs jumping in. Cannoli, what's up, Cannoli? Thanks for joining us, brother. I appreciate you. John, what's up, John? Thanks for joining us. Look at Niet. A little sneaky near Niet. And I'll just quickly scroll down. If I miss someone, I apologize. Just do a shout out. Hey, Jay, whatever. Or Gooch, sorry, whatever. Gord King, what's up? Is this show based on Raid Shadow Legends?
That's season 2. That's season 2.
This show based on Raid Shadow Legends.
Oh yeah, thanks, Jana, for the update. July 3rd. Thanks for joining us, Gord. CLS is in the house. He's another one that was there for us. What's up, CLS? And quickly scroll through this. Oh, Justin, what's up, Justin? Thanks for joining us, Justin. And of course, Copa. Copa's in the house. What's up, Copa? Edge Runners is better than Arcane. All right. Season 1. We like, it's so long ago since we've done this, but a couple things before we dive into it. Like, this was done by Fortiche Productions, and like Goodwin and I were talking about this in the back. Oh, there he is, Eraserhead. What's up? The other OG in the house. What's up, Eraserhead? We were talking about this. This was filmed at 60 frames per second, and by Fortiche, and there was like over 40,000 frames in total for this series. So to do it frame by frame, to watch each frame, it would take about 2.5 years to look at each frame every half hour. Like, that's how they kind of played it out. So like, that's a lot of freaking frames.
Wasn't there a Twitter account that was actually doing that? They were. I'm sure there was one that was posting like a frame by frame every frame of Arcane.
Yes,
I'm sure there was one. Because every now and then it sort of came up in my feed, and I felt happy. It was nice.
I mean, I'd sign up for that. Let's just talk about every frame. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. And then of course,
the world record for longest stream, 2.5 years, no breaks, just talking about every frame of Arcane.
Frame. Yeah, exactly. That's
we're gonna do EPAP, but we're gonna do it literally. Yes, we're gonna do every frame of pause. Let's go.
More frames than the Louvre, starring Gooch.
No. But like we were talking in the back room before we jumped on here, because Goodwin and I always like to talk like the technical side of things when it comes to this animation. This was like done with a lot of grease pencils. There was a lot of 3D with 2D. There was like some painting involved, and they said they used 2D FX, but Goodwin, like, you really know this really well. So if you want to explain a little bit more on the animation technique and all that, so dive in.
So the first thing is that the writers and the the people that kind of put this story together were actually competent. I know this is a scary thing that we don't encounter much, but they actually made very specific storyboards, which guided Fortiche on every step, and it made their job a lot easier. Because here's the exact shot, the way I want it from this camera view. Here's what's going on in the background. Great. So layout could go in and just do, your background stuff and make sure all that's good. Then, the storyboards were specific enough, and the animation is 3D. Now they then paint over it to give it kind of the cell painted look to it, right? But that's part of the 3D process. What they did was a lot of stuff. If you kind of step away, get away from the specific detail, and just look at it, it looks mocapped or rotoscoped. It's not. What they did is they had a lot of reference frames that they used where you take video of yourself doing a thing, or you find somebody doing a specific move in a movie that you kind of want to replicate, right? And then you set up keyframes for the movement of the character, which doesn't mean that you have to, that saves you I got to draw, 60 frames per second.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would be like 10 years working on this thing and still wouldn't be done. But because they had already worked on some previous stuff with Riot, so they worked on the 2013 short Get Jinxed for Riot, and so they had already established this style in an earlier short that they did. Riot actually saw the short, and it was one of the reasons that they talked to him about it. But they built up these algorithmic ways to move people a certain way, to when they speak, this is the way their lips move, right, and all that, so that you don't have to constantly repeat yourself. You can get more efficient as you go, right, because you start building up this library of things. But after they did the three-dimensional character design, and then anything that was going on action-wise, there was then a 2D pass over that, and that's where you get things like the fire. You'll notice that like when they light the cigarette lighters and things like that, the fire looks different than the rest of the background of the characters, and they're doing it intentionally. When Jinx has her crazy moments,
your episodes, yeah,
that's all 2D, overlaid on the 3D animation and all that, and it really, they're leveraging as many of the tools that they have in their toolbox to tell this great story. But were it not for the writers and the proper way that they planned how you're supposed to do this, what we actually want to see, and all that, it would have been much harder on the animators. And as we pointed out time and time again, storyboarding seems to have got up and left the building for a lot of productions these days, and that's why you end up going over budget and having things look like crap.
Speaking of storyboarding going over when it's out the window, did we just fucking give up on Uzumaki? Because I could just drink a lot, but I don't even remember doing the last couple episodes.
Yeah, well,
did you see episodes 3 and 4?
Yeah,
they gave up. Why the hell wouldn't we?
Yeah, like it was kind of like what was the other one we just Terminator 0, and it was the same conversation. It was always going back to timelines with Terminator, and then with Uzumaki, it was just becoming this comical, tear it apart,
I'm okay with having. It just occurred to me.
It
storyboard out the window.
Yeah, we covered all of the problems when we did episode 2, and so it was essentially done at that point.
Yeah,
it was just such a huge contrast between episode 1, which is a masterpiece, to episode 2, and we thoroughly went through the degradation of the animation quality and just how bad they were at adapting the manga. So there's literally no point, Leon, to doing episodes 3 and 4.
No, I completely agree. It occurred because again when he said that, it just sparked the thought. But thankfully for this episode, every episode is a masterpiece. Like,
yeah. Well, let's get into the actual stories and the characters themselves, and how it all began. So we started off right off the get-go with what we know of Vander on the bridge. At the battle of the
part of the games, Nick.
What's that?
Is Vander part of the lore of the games, or was he created for this show?
Yeah, because
he's not in the game now.
Okay, so because I remember Platoon and myself were always, and the people that were on the panel, we never had anyone that actually played the games, and we always were wondering about some of these characters in the series, if they were actually in the games or just brought in just as to make a story. But I know Heimerdinger's in there, right? In the game.
Yeah. Heimerdinger's in there. Like someone like Silco, right? Like he's not in the game at all. But considering he was such a prominent villain in this season here, I was like, man, I kind of wish he was in the game. Like, it wouldn't make sense as far as them to add it now, unless they were just like, well, we'll add him into the game, even though he's, dead up to the current point of the story where they all are. So, but yeah, I mean, I like that they included Vander as a precursor to how Vi really, comes into her future self, because it's almost like, where do you see her get those gauntlets from, right? Like, but those are badass looking, because in the game she has some amazing moves, and I wanted to see some of those moves in action in the show, which you kind of do see. I think in the 9th episode, which is an amazing fight.
So is this is like background lore that leads up to the current situation in game?
Yep. Like if you notice what Jace says to Silco when they meet by themselves up on the wall, he says, like, people forget what's outside of our borders. And there's like 15 different factions altogether. Right. There's a huge world that, is exciting, because I want to see more of this. I love what they've done with this entire universe.
Yeah, and you get that
added to the game, or how you wish it would have been added to the game. They did actually do that though with Mel's mom. Mel's mom got added to the game, which was really interesting of a character to pick.
Who's Mel's mom?
Well, the one character that
We don't have Andrew here to simp on her. That's
I know.
Yeah,
Like,
no
Don't
muscle
worry,
mommy love.
Mel this whole
Yeah.
episode, dude. Mel is waifu for life boost, straight up.
Gotcha.
It is though. It is how storytelling is supposed to work, and it sounds so incredibly basic and simple, and yet you go through almost any recent Hollywood movie, it doesn't operate like that anymore. If you compare it to say Alien Romulus or Deadpool and Wolverine, the scenes are there to get you to a reference, which can only really be properly understood and appreciated if you are familiar with the lore. In other words, there isn't really much story going on. What it's doing is just dropping familiar things at you and saying, hey, remember when you used to like the other thing that was good? We're trying to take credit for that. Whereas now, it's nice to be able to sit here and say, well, was this person in the game or not? I want to learn about what the game is and what the character is represented as in the game. But it's absolutely not required to enjoy this story. This story is very confident in taking away these characters and doing a really interesting thing with them. It's telling a fantastic story. That's how these things should work.
Yeah.
More of this would be nice.
Yeah.
I promise it'll be the only time I bring this up tonight. I compare it to the Sonic the Hedgehog films because it did the same thing. You could have never touched a Sonic game, watched those two films. I assume watch the third as well. You get a cohesive story without ever touching the source material, but it was also good enough to get people interested in the source material.
Yeah.
I haven't watched them yet, but
I see that.
There's the one character that I know that we touched on quite a bit, and we wanted to know more about them. Was that what was that wizard? That guy that gave the little blue.
The suddenly
the one
wizard
that
guy who
saved
rescues
Jace.
child Jace.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those things. I wouldn't necessarily call that a flaw, but it was one of those very sudden things. It doesn't really come back again. It wants an explanation, I think, for season 2. I'm hoping that we get one in season 2 because season 2 will expand the world to include whatever that was. If it doesn't do that, then it was a very probably slightly too convenient shorthand for getting the character to the place he needs to be with the incentives he has to form his motivation later on. And you can get away with some of that if the rest of your show is good, which this is. But I am keen to see what, if anything, they do with that.
Yeah, I mean, you have Heimerdinger hinting about the problems with magic and how the world was bad and the reason that they built Piltover was to essentially escape that. But yeah, I want to see why it is that Jace would have encountered a magic user at that time.
Is it confirmed that season 2 of Arcane will be the last season? Because Nick said there's like 15 factions, and I feel like that they're going to be leaving out a lot of lore. This is only a 2-season.
They made it clear there's only one more season and they're done.
That's what I thought too. Wow. So they're either just not going to cover a lot of stuff, or they're only. I don't know. That's interesting.
Like,
you would think we've got content for years based off this.
I mean, keep in mind they could create an entirely different show, call it something different that takes place in one of the other factions. Like, one of my favorite factions, because it's like the champions, is Demacia. Demacia would be pretty cool to see. Like, there's a couple other ones like Noxus.
Would they not fit in with the lore that this show has built though? Like, do they not really interact? Is that what it is?
I mean, it depends on how they want to tell the background of certain characters. For example, like certain characters from other factions have killed like family members of other factions, for example. And I mean, I think they could tie things over. Kind of like how Jace wants to hold Jinx responsible for all the the things she's done, right? So you've got two factions there, technically, with Piltover and Zaun. There's plenty of other things that are associated with one another. Like, there's a character called Fiddlesticks. He's like this little scarecrow-looking figure, and he kills people on the outskirts of Demacia. Demacia is sort of like a knight's kingdom. Just think of it that way, right? And like, it would be cool to kind of do something like that. But there's there's so many champions now, like within every single faction. So like they could really do a lot. I see Jedi Brooks in the chat say fuck Fiddlesticks. 100%, man. Jungle Fiddlesticks was a bitch.
Oh, Fiddlesticks is the jungle character. I'm interested. Go on.
Oh my god. Yeah. He does this. I'm gonna nerd out for a second here. Sorry. He does this.
Cook. Go ahead, Cook. Yeah, Cook.
He'll be in the jungle bush where you can't see him unless you have a ward there, and he'll ult, which is a little teleport, and it's like a AoE circle. If you get caught in that, you just take a shit ton of magic damage, and you're feared, so you lose control of your character for a few seconds, but you can get melted, and it's just like it sucks. I used to call him fiddle shits. But yeah, no, I definitely agree. He's a pain in the ass to deal with.
So, yeah, there's a lot of people saying they can expand on the lore, like doing like branch off into other series here. And like I've never played the game. I know we were always curious about like the game itself, and like especially with the Nyx, is that the wizard's name that that Jedi mentioned there that gave the little blue ball to
Jace.
Jace.
He's not in the game, which I mean, and that's the interesting thing too. Like I'm sure there might be characters in season 2 that aren't in the game. Like there were some characters that I was
sorry.
Yeah. I like Singed is a pain in the ass to deal with, and you don't see him a lot in this season. I'm expecting to see a lot of them in season 2 though. Rise. I think that's could be Rise turning into him for sure.
Quickly before we get going here, Hosty with the $4.99. As many L's as Netflix takes, they do put out bangers like Arcane, Blue Eye Samurai, and are giving us the Goon movie after 10 years. So, yeah, you're right there, Hosty. Thanks for joining us, Hosty. I always appreciate you joining us. But yeah, getting back to the storyline, we start off right in like on the war on the bridge here, and we like Vi and Powder see their parents and they're dead, and Vander's kind of adopting him here, and it's kind of you see the beginning of the trauma with these two kids. And we talked at length about the trauma and the psyche of these characters, especially obviously Jinx or Powder. She's
Powder this
called
time
here, when she's really young. And then we get into seeing other characters like Milo and Klager, who joined, that are kind of like adopted brothers, and they're running through the streets and they're trying to survive. They go up into Piltover because they're down in Zaun, the underworld. That's where they're living with all the other Zaunites, I guess you can say. And this is years after, I would assume probably 8 to 10 years later.
Yeah,
they're grown up a bit, and they're on their own, running around trying to survive in the streets and gather whatever they can to pay for like food and other things. And then we get introduced to that group, and we go on for the ride for that. And then they find as they're like getting into one of the rooms, and we find out later the room is actually Jace's room. But we get into the room, and they find the little blue crystals. Powder does, and things just start happening from there. Your thoughts with that introduction in the beginning? I know we went over it a lot, like almost a year ago, but like for me, when like that intro was a banger, like a start, and then it just makes so much sense as we see these characters develop over time and how much trauma they've seen and are packing away in their brains and unable to process things properly, especially like they're emotional, like they're based in their brain stems all the time with emotional responses back and all that stuff. So your guys' thoughts with like the first episode, like seeing these kids and learning about these kids?
Powder was a really, really interesting character watching, because the difference between Powder and Vi's age is about the difference between me and my little brother. And I had that group of friends that my dad pretty much made me bring my brother on. We would go riding our bikes around the neighborhood, or we go into explore like abandoned areas and whatnot. And it was kind of because I don't know, maybe other people do. I don't see very often that sort of dynamic of like oh man, I actually did identify with this. I'm watching Powder. I'm fucking hating a young Powder the same way I hated my little brother tagging along with me. But that hate wasn't an actual hate. It was like a reminiscing, nostalgic endearment. And like, it was sort of like, oh, I hate it because I hated it back then. And now it makes me happy remembering I hated it. The whole opening sequence was seeing her be such a loser and a screw up was, I don't know, it was really endearing. It hit me on the emotional level out the gate for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's more in it, right? There's more in. It's only 40-something minutes long, isn't it? I think the opening episode, and that there is more content in just the first episode than you will find in like 8-hour-long episodes of a given big budget Amazon production. It's so impressive. I mean, it's been such a long time. I need to do a full rewatch before season 2 comes out, so I'm sort of going a bit from distant memories here. But you have the setups for obviously you've got Vi and Jinx, you've got Heimerdinger, you have the Council, you have Mel, her relationship with the Council, you've got Jace, his relationship with Mel, his relationship with the Council, his relationship with Heimerdinger, you've got the Council's relationship with the rest of Piltover, you've got Piltover's relationship with the Underworld. Like, there's so much. Then you've got why am I blanking on the name of the villain? Yeah, every single second of this is setting something up, and it's so nice to see. It doesn't have to sit there having characters linger on single lines of dialogue for a minute in a bit to make them sound profound and just dragging the pace of the thing out. Everything matters, and it's such a nice, well-condensed show. It's lovely.
Yeah, and you very quickly understand like the motivations of the characters, and they make perfect sense. They're written like humans. The decisions they make, you're like, all right, I can see why that decision was made, right? Unlike so much of what we see in modern writing.
Well, and you say it does so much setup work, which it absolutely does, but you don't realize in the one-to-one moment that's what it's doing. Like think of stand-up comedy. Some of the best jokes are ones that you don't realize, you don't know when the punchline's coming because you don't know where the setup ends and the punchline ends. It's just a comedian talking. Then eventually you find yourself laughing. That's what this entire first episode is. It's seamless. It's flawless. Again.
Yeah, you don't have the exposition dumped. I'm doing the thing because it's going to set up this, and I'm going to shut up. That none of that happens, right? It just organically occurs. And the thing, Jedi Brooks made a good point about the beginning of this. You know, right from the get go that this is going to be childish, silly, whatever, right? I mean, you have the parents and the people killed immediately. You have Vander. Turning and seeing, Powder and Vi, and that kind of resets his, I'm fighting, and then he walks away from it, right? Because he knows it's kind of done. You that initial, scene on the bridge establishes the themes that we're going to be addressing all throughout, the entire first season. It establishes why people are making decisions that they do. It sets up the psychology of different characters, right? I mean, that's doing a lot of work in a short period of time, and it's again, I mean, this is the best thing that Netflix has done. Period.
And the interconnectedness as well, because in an other show which is equivalently dense but doesn't have the same connective through line, it can just seem very spread out, diffuse. You don't necessarily know what's impacting what and why, and it's much easier to get lost in. Whereas because Arcane takes the very sensible decision of, here is single, small, magical item, and this is the thing which every single character's life and fate is going to revolve around for the next however many episodes of the season there are. I've actually forgotten off the top of my head.
Nine
episodes. Nine. For the next 9 episodes, everything sort of revolves around this. And the episodes themselves very wisely show you the interconnectedness before they really let you appreciate the fullness of the thing. The fact that they break into Jace's house and that they've stolen it from him. The single item is the thing that sort of keeps your attention, and it's the thing that makes you see that every single plot thread is going to impact the other one in some way. You might not know how yet, but it will, and it makes it just much easier to follow. It's not even that complicated to do, but just have a single little MacGuffin-like device used properly can really, really help structure a very complicated narrative.
Yeah, and the cascading interactions.
MacGuffin is used as a pejorative nowadays when talking about the structure of films, but it's not inherently a bad thing. It's just so improperly used 9 times out of 10.
It's better than the MacGuffin in Venom 3. Sorry, I had to say that.
Everything is better than everything in Venom 3. My God.
I think one of the interesting things for me about this show was, and having played the game and understanding where the characters come from, and just seeing how Jinx's identity was already set when you first play as her in the game, and seeing them together as kids, as sisters, and being so young. For me, it's like, okay, what does it take in order to get both of them in the places that they end up to where I know them to be? And obviously, we know from certain shows that have prequels in them, you can add a bunch of fluff, you can drag stuff out, like House of the Dragon. and just not do a really good job at it. But when you have a show like this, when you have a good writing team and such an established lore that League of Legends has done, and props to Riot for this, you divide 9 episodes into 3 arcs, and this first arc is all about childhood and the tragedy that all of them have to go through. Like, episode 3, when we know we'll get to it, but is such a pivotal moment for them as kids. And episode 1 sets the tone, and just like Jedi said, like that they're not messing around. You're in for a fantastic journey through this entire season, and there's not a dull moment in this show. Like, it's not like, oh well, this episode was bad, this episode was not the best. I mean, I'm sure people have their favorite episodes, but you get hooked. And like you said, Leon, like, this is a show you can absolutely binge straight through.
It's unintentional. I hate binging. I cannot stress enough how much I hate binging. 9 episodes in one sitting.
But they set everything up appropriately. And just like Platoon said, that you've got the rivalry between Silco, Vander, Undercity, Piltover, and just the sisters, understanding the sisters and what they do, where they come from. And that's the tone. And you just watch the plot unfold through every single theme.
Riot Games
every
consider
single
this
one.
canon, Nick?
What's that?
Does Riot Games consider this show canon? Because I know a lot of game
Yes.
studios, when they have shows, they're actually not canon.
Yeah, no, they wrote it. So
Yeah, this is canon.
Okay.
Which is great. Like, and I know this is something where you can't expect some of the main characters to die, unfortunately, but fortunately as well. So, it's kind of a nice thing. So any new character that comes into it, like Vander, like Silco, if since the writing is so well done with them, and even Vander, because he's not in it a lot compared to Silco, who is, we can enjoy those characters. We can love or hate those characters, and then they can kill them off if they choose to, and then we can still feel something about them. We can still understand, like, man, this is a greatly written character, but they're not in it anymore, and they're not obviously in the game at that point either. Yeah,
and I love the fact that you have so you start out and you see young people, and there's this major event, and then you very quickly establish the relationship between Piltover and the Under city and all that. But the themes that are set up early on end up showing up in the last episode as well, right? Silco becomes Vander to a certain degree, right? That Vander puts away the I'm going to fight, because now he has these kids and this responsibility and all that stuff. Silco is given the, hey, we're giving you everything you want, right? This is on and all the rights and this and whatever. All you have to do is hand over Jinx. And he has taken on that familial, fatherly burden. And he's like, nah, not my kids, right? And the thing that he hated Vander for, right, and the reason that there's bitterness there is that you walked away from the fight. You weren't willing to do anything for Zaun. That's where Silco ends up, right? And the way you get there is perfectly reasonable, perfectly logical. And you look at it and go, yeah, this is gonna be. You're sitting there looking. Is Silco actually? I mean, is he gonna be? Is he gonna be like, yeah, you can have Jinx or whatever, because you're not really sure about. Silco said a lot of things, but you don't know whether he means the things that he says to Jinx and things like that. And then he makes that choice, and you're like, you've ended up in Vander's situation now, and
you find yourself hoping, which is what makes Silco such a great villain, because in a weird way you're rooting for him. You don't want him to take over the world, to be an asshole, to ruin Piltover, but man, you want him to love Jinx. You want that to be real and it not just be a manipulation tactic.
Yep.
And you want him to achieve his goal of liberating Zaun at the same time. Mm-hmm. So there's that complexity with him. Go on, Gooch.
Oh, no. It's just the question from St. Hugo here. And thank you for watching there, St. Hugo. My question would be, Arcane so far does stand out, not only in these times, but would do so still compared to older and great stories told, or is just me being starved? Oh,
I would say that it would stand up regardless. I mean, if it was just, the we did the right things for characters and all that's damn solid and it would already blow away anything that's going on now. But there are so many things going on with this, and it doesn't feel bloated. It doesn't feel like, oh God, I'm going back to these characters that I don't care about to talk about. And it shows how everything is interconnected. And there's an overall theme to all this, right? It's the cost of change, right? Whether it's a technology leap, whether it's a social leap, whether it's individual growth or whatever, there is a cost to doing that versus maintaining status quo and the inertia of staying there. And you see it reflected at the personal level all the way up to the societal level, right? It is really well done.
Also, when comparing it to things of the past, you also got to realize that until anime took its grip on the West, Western cartoons were episodic, serialized. They didn't you can't when you say we romanticize how much we loved G.I. Joe or Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but those were effectively toy commercials. They weren't narratives.
I don't think he's referring just to animation. I
want to bring up this goes to show how much animation has changed, because you could watch this as a child or an adult and fall in love with it. I know because I watched it with a child the second go round, and it affected them on an emotional level that's something like, I don't know, what do kids watch these days? Point is, whatever.
Yeah.
TikTok. They watch their phones.
Yeah. Kilted Cajun for $10. Thank you there, Kilted. 2 more days, thoroughly excited. Yes, season 2. Heard a few things already. I was concerned, and Platoon and Goodwin can vouch, because I was saying ooh, I don't know how season 2 is going to go. But thank you for the $10. Appreciate that, bro.
I think there probably will always be a slight bias against it. Whether or not it deserves to be ranked amongst truly great stories is almost a separate and equivalently interesting question as to whether it will ever be treated as one. I think there is still a kind of latent bias against animation anyway. I know a few people who say, that's for kids, isn't it? I'm not going to watch a cartoon. Cartoons aren't good. It's a generational thing, but generational things are also important. It might never quite get the universal acclaim that it probably does deserve. It's not a perfect show on its own merits. It does have flaws. It's not a flawless production. And it's not a finished production either. So I'd sort of hold off giving it any kind of accolade for best show of all time until season 2 is done. But I mean, if season 2 does manage to land everything that's been set up, if it's even just the same quality as season 1, it will go down probably as one of the best TV shows.
Also, I would add to that, Platoon, not just compared to animation, but also video game adaptations. Because at the end of the day, that is what this is. This is a video game adaptation, which are, no matter how great some recent ones have been, have the reputation for being notoriously bad. And frankly, that was one. Not only did I not care about League of Legends, but also knew that video game adaptations were normally bad. That was literally another barrier of entry for me as a viewer. Which is why, Gooch, you're such a great salesman.
Well, I think the problem that you have with video game adaptations is what Platoon said, where it's like, here, you recognize this thing, and everybody cheers because they saw the thing, right?
No, it's actually the opposite, Goodwin. It's that they don't even give us shit to recognize. They just use it in name only. I would actually appreciate if video games went as hard as Deadpool and Wolverine. Still wouldn't make them good adaptations, but at least it would give us something.
Yeah, and I think when...
Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to say, when a show or a film is tasked with adapting something that's so complex, and judging by what Nick has been describing on chat and before we got in here, there's so much world building and depth to the characters. I think a lesser show would have just dropped exposition at the opening with someone reading out the history of Piltover and Zaun and some of the characters and be like, look, we've done all the work. But what makes Arcane work for me is that it adopts the principle of show, don't tell. And as we've said, you don't need to have played the game to understand the characters and the world building. At the same time, there's an economy to the dialogue and setup. Nothing is wasted or contrived. The episodes don't really get bogged down, and every single frame, whether in the form of dialogue, action, or setting, has a story to tell if you're paying attention.
I think it probably benefits as well from not trying to overdo it in terms of tie-ins to huge amounts of lore that won't necessarily be directly relevant, but if they're hoping for sequels or spin-offs, then they'll throw them in because it'll be sort of teasers and setups for things that might never happen. it feels very much like they've treated this as their one and only shot. And so they've done absolutely everything they can to tell the most complete and self-contained story they can. And if anything comes from that as a result, spin-offs, sequels, whatever it is, more seasons, then you can work out what story there should be there. But they've evidently not been told in advance, here's $1 billion, make us 5 seasons. Because that is the absolute enemy of efficiency. It just degrades quality. Everyone should always be on tenterhooks as to whether they will even get a next episode, never mind 3 more seasons. And I was reading a thing earlier today about it. I think Riot is planning on some other things at least set in the same universe. But they might not have done that had Arcane not been as good as it was. And if they had already said, we're going to pre-announce all of these, then Arcane might have been sloppier and it might not have been so good, and then people wouldn't be interested. It's just generally a better approach to take. It's not dissimilar to the one that they're doing with George R.R. Martin's stuff on HBO. House of the Dragon comes out. House of the Dragon, if it is good, spawns more spin-offs. It gets a second season, that's pretty much baked in. But then, of course, because it's performing well, there's still interest there. Proof of concept is there, so they commission A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, which comes out, I think, next year. And if that does well, they'll probably do another one. If that does well, they'll probably do another one. It's slightly a poison chalice because of what happens with Game of Thrones Season 8, obviously. But the fact is, they seem to be using proof of concept to, show there is demand, there is quality. Let's continue this. We'll earn the next step. And more shows should do that.
Yeah, I think that's the problem that we've had with streaming is that you become disconnected with revenue per episode or per season in the way that classical TV was. Because if you don't have audience, then advertisers don't pay, you don't make money, you're canceled. Streaming, there were a lot of streaming services that just jumped in. It was like, oh yes, we're going to give you 3 seasons for no damn reason, even though you haven't even made a pilot. And then your personal Vietnam, which is Rings of Power, they have 5 seasons, and they shouldn't have had 5 minutes.
Well, Rings of Power would not have gotten even season 1 if it was back in the days of network television. They would have done a pilot, and it would have just fallen apart there.
Exactly.
And it wouldn't even gotten to season 1. So.
Yeah,
I think this show is a little bit different though, because this show can be monetized in ways that things like Marco Polo or Santa Clarita Diet or whatever couldn't be. This is going to sell toys. This is going to get microtransactions in video games. This is going to get posters and shirts and Hot Topic that are going to appeal to a so basically they have the anime model here, which is the show will not make money. The show will advertise for a shit that will make money, but it will only make money if there's quality to it, and there was quality to this.
Right, but the thing is that the show was written and put together like they didn't tell the writers that was even an option, right? That the only way that this thing could be successful is if you do it well, and you can see the results of that.
That fair, completely fair.
I wonder if the show would have still been as successful, and if a lot of people who enjoy it now would have enjoyed it if it was made as a live action show.
No.
And so that leads me to my next thing that I read today was that I think it was the highest budgeted animation for season 1, season 2 in history.
Yep.
I
read that same article earlier.
$280 million.
It's coming up to 250, but I mean that is if you I think combine the budgets of both seasons. And actually, someone did brief. I think it was CBR or who it might have been Variety, whichever out there first published that. Basically saying someone at the studio said one of the major reasons for that cost is that the studio itself didn't really know what it was doing on the industry side. Like a lot of it was down to inexperience. They didn't really know how to navigate entertainment as an industry in this way. So in theory, it shouldn't have been as expensive as it turned out to be, and they will probably be able to economize later. So it might be slightly misleading to focus too much on the budget for the combined seasons. However, it's interesting to note that they're still willing to put up more money, even though they made so many mistakes by the sounds of things.
And even then,
Nick, I would say it would. I don't know what the success would be like, but it would work as a live action. I think Last of Us and Fallout, regardless of what you think of them, have proven that with a certain level of quality, live action video game adaptations as series do work, and that there is a market for them. So yes, I actually do think this will succeed in live action.
Oh, but look at oh my god, I can't think of the damn anime. That was
One
released
Piece?
on Netflix.
One Piece?
Yeah, One Piece. Dude,
One
look at One
Piece.
Piece.
One Piece
You
is
know what I'm
another
saying?
great example.
But there was also Death Note.
It's not talking about that.
Yeah,
It's not good examples, dude.
Yeah.
They were
Things
they were
that
flicking
work with
yeah.
adaptation.
Well, they did a lot of flicking of shit against the wall to see which one sticks. So
Oh, yeah, I know.
they finally got
Isn't there a
one.
Naruto movie? I think live action.
There's one in production. Yes,
There's one. Yeah.
Cowboy
hesitant
Bebop.
about
Yes, I saw that too.
I mean,
well,
Cowboy.
so, yeah.
One thing
The
I
original
would
creator of
say
Naruto
is
not involved beyond being a producer.
one thing I would say about the way that they made this show. There's a lot of expense up front, and then it gets cheaper for every episode you make because you once you build certain animations into the movements of characters, right? That is a reusable item, right? But you have to build that up front to get it done. You have to build up front your city backgrounds, your settings and things like that, right? Which are then reusable going forward. So the costs are kind of, there's a lot of upfront. It tends to drop over time as you make it. The other thing is that if you were doing this live action, there is no way that you would have the ability and control of the cinematography in the way that you do in this animation and the way that they use it in order to tell story.
It would be
Yeah, a
difficult,
lot of the-
but I feel like, sorry, I'd say it almost like you'd have to do some sort of like Matrix style incorporation. But
you would essentially do like live action, but insert a whole bunch of CG and all that stuff, at which point you're animating it. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
let's animate it.
A lot of the camera
by the way,
movements
I
in
do
this
think
are
animation was a
impossible
better
to
way to
replicate.
go.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. The one character I love the most throughout the whole series is Jinx. The development of this character was unbelievable. The splintering of the mind or fracturing of the mind, that attracted me to this character the most. Like of just seeing her develop into this ultimate villain at the end. She experienced so much loss, and just unbelievable work they did with this character, because like Vi is just not really, she's been locked up, she's been allowed to kind of deal with a lot of her emotional stresses that she's experienced by being in prison for a long time.
Vi was
And-
older too.
And yeah,
Yep.
well, Vi was out there, but it's the way they developed a lot of these characters was fantastic. A lot of contrast throughout this whole series. Like you had Silco and Vander, you had Vi and Jinx, you had
Jason,
and
Victor.
Yeah, you had Mel and her mom, Ambessa. You had you even had like Marcus with Silco. You had Marcus with
Marcus and Grayson.
Grayson. You had there's so much Echo. You had Echo in there with Heimerdinger at first, like, and then they kind of eventually came together as Heimerdinger realized, what Echo was actually trying to establish. So like there's just a lot there that I really appreciated through this whole series. Like it was, and I remember like when we were going through this series, like how much fun we were like diving deep into this almost every scene. But
Yeah.
you like for the people that weren't here for the first time, like your thoughts like of experiencing this, watching like Jinx, for example, like Silco and Vander, like the psychological aspects of this series, because that's what I got attracted to, like outside the animation. But
I mean, it, like I said, to see how Jinx is this innocent kid that just wants to be with her big sister and kind of goes into this maniac. It's really sad, and I felt bad for her, because all she wanted to do was just be with her sister. And Vi says it at one point, like, I shouldn't have called you Jinx. And when she slaps her in episode 3, it's like, man, that was like the severance of their sibling bond that was forever banished, unfortunately. And it sucks, because obviously if you have siblings, like I have a younger sister, I could never do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, regardless of how much I might have fought with her when I was younger, it's tough to see, but like that's what also makes it so attractive with the characters, with the writing, with the emotions. And Just such a great job with Jinx as a character.
Well, the voice acting, the dialogue. It all came together. It's like we reviewed Attack of the Clones last night, and like you're
that's dialogue to ignore.
You're watching this wooden plank try to act and try to be emotional, and it's just like, oh,
but he's given dialogue written by like a 10-year-old, and
he's given dialogue written by a 10-year-old, and also the character difference. If you're comparing, say, Anakin and Jinx, Anakin has a couple of characteristics. And to be fair, that still makes him a deeper character than most films characters that have come out since. But they're still, it's not especially deep. You have a bit of trauma because of the loss of the mother. You have the fear for the potential loss of girlfriend, and then that morphs into murdering children for reasons. He murders children to save children. It's a mess. It's a messy film. It's a messy prequels. But if you compare it with Jinx, Jinx gets effectively frozen in time in that moment when when Vi slaps her. That's sort of there's a kind of character break there, which Jinx is then permanently on that knife edge. She's still a child, and she only can make sense of the world when she's gamifying everything. She's at her most competent when she treats everything in the world as a video game, kind of a video game, or like a toy or something like that. Whenever the real world confronts her in a way that she can't cope with, that's when the persona breaks. And you can tell, it's not that she's abandoned her sister, because one of the inciting events later on is that she sees Vi with Caitlyn, who's only kind of there really as a foil for Jinx. That inspires this jealousy. My sister has abandoned me for her, so I'm going to commit rash action. But there are so many competing but complementary aspects to Jinx's character, any 2 or 3 of which would make her incredibly deep. But there are about a dozen of them, which just makes her so compelling.
And the fact that
real quick, Platoon, I wouldn't say that she's there just as a foil for Jinx. She's also there to show the juxtaposition of like the royalty towards somebody who also like actually respects and admires the working class and wants to be part of it.
It's maybe slightly harsh to say. I think in that scene she's principally there as a foil for Jinx. I do think Caitlyn is probably the most shallow of the characters in the show, though, because you're right. Like she is there to portray a kind of social divide as well, but that's still character kind of as means to end in the way that not many of the other characters are used like that. So she's there to demonstrate something which is not a huge amount to do with her. And I like, if there's one of the problems I have with the show, probably is her character. I think that she's the weakest link of all of them in terms of having the least to do and the least to say and the least introspection. But you're right. She does more than just be a foil, I suppose.
I have a to take about the show that's probably going to cause flames, but I want to preface this with, I think Vi is a well-written character. I understand her motivations. I think she is fantastic for what the show has her do. I fucking hate her. I can't stand Vi. Throughout this whole show, I'm Team Jinx through and through. Fuck Vi. But again, she's not a bad character. Just personal preference-wise, I hate that bitch.
I'll just say Haley Steinfeld is hot, so... no, but she does a good job. But I can see why you would say that, Leon. So, but I think for the first act, in specifically in episode 3, the fact that there's this miscommunication between the sisters, and it's like such a cliche thing for the younger sibling to do is to not listen to the authority figure or, the older sibling, right? And so she does her own thing because she thinks she's going to do something good. And in turn, she ends up killing their father figure, right? She ends up killing Vander, essentially, or, causing him to lead to his death. And their
brothers.
And their brothers. So you've got 3 family members that are now died because you didn't listen to your sister. And then obviously, I agree with Dax. Like, she was under... unreal distress, and she realized it when she slaps Powder.
That's actually not why. The first third, I like young Vi. It's old Vi that I don't like. I feel like by the end of the show, she never actually learned a lesson. Has never learned how to compromise. I do not think her bullheadedness is a means to an end. I don't think it would be successful. I think that Vi is actually people talk about how Jinx is stuck in the past because of being slapped and whatnot, and it has the mental fracture. I think Vi is far worse because she is completely cognitive, mentally functional, and she is equally as stuck in the past. I'm sorry, I feel no impact on Vi's resolution by the end of the show. Maybe season 2 will change that, and I'm very open to it. But no, I'm not.
She
a
has
fan
to
of
go
Vi.
on an arc like that, but I think that's thematically on point though for the show. It's a thematically rich show as well, but one of the major themes is it's almost fatalistic events once set in motion. You can see any number of individual decisions which might have led to a better outcome, but then none of them are taken, and in a small instance of a mistake compounds itself. So Vi is effectively a mirror to Vanda's younger self. She is the rash person he used to be. He made mistakes.
That's why
He's
I
making the
prefaced
same
it
mistakes.
is well written. That I do think the story makes sense.
Yeah.
I do, like that's why I felt that preface was important, because I understand the character. I just don't fucking like it.
I think the other thing is you need a few characters that are morally uncompromising, because you have so much of the let's just do this to kind of get along, and these were my principles, and then I got exposed to certain things, and then I lose those, right? That it swallows me up. Whereas Vi is, she doesn't compromise on it, right? She wants a certain thing, she's not going to get it, and yeah, it's definitely a callback to Vander. But you see it with multiple characters.
Eventually compromise because he ends up working with the police of Piltover, and so again, maybe we will get that from Vi in season 2. Like,
right? She's still young, and oh, by the way, it's been locked up, so she hasn't had the relationships and all that stuff to get it done, right? So she's also a bit stunted in her, and oh, by the way, has a hate boner because essentially, like, every day somebody come in to beat the shit out of her, for years. And so there's the both of the sisters are kind of stuck in a certain time slot, right? Jinx is like mentally incapable of being an adult, right? She is stuck being a child. She sees things in a childish way, but also, there are very key things about her, like betrayal. There's a reason that she beats the hell out of Sabako and hangs her up from the ceiling with liar on it, right? It's why she has the interrogation with her sister, right? Because she feels betrayed and is wanting to have that relationship. She wants to get back to when things were better, but again, she views everything with this childish, absolutist kind of view.
I think either way, they were all written perfectly in my mind. Vi's stunted because she, again, like you said, constantly being traumatized in a prison cell daily, and all she can think about is, getting out and at some point, and just saying, "Fuck the world, I'm going to burn it all down," and maybe find my sister at some point. You got characters like Silco, who was developed really well with the relationship with Vander. You have like all these characters that I think they're really real. Like Echo is an interesting character. I think we'll hopefully see more of him. Yeah, because he's obviously gone through a lot as well. Like the amount of trauma. Like was it Jedi that made a comment here? Jedi made a comment here. Caitlyn is a simple but well executed. I disagree that she's the weakest. I agree with that, because she's not the weakest. She's having her eyes opened up to what the real world is and what is actually being hidden from her for the longest time. Like, they're pulling back the curtain and she's seeing everything for the first time, and it's just like, this actually happens. Like this is mistreatment of people. Like she like, there's a lot of that. Like Jace is another one. Like Victor has been through it, and he's just been trying to get by daily with his he's limited because of his body, his failing body. Like, everything that they did with these characters is linked somehow to make the story flow perfectly. There was a part there, I think it was at like 5, 6, 7 or something, where the pacing was really frantic. Yeah. And we talked about it, and then it just kind of got stuck at, like, I think around 7 or 8. It just kind of died out and just didn't work as well there. And then it just, established a great ending. But there's a lot there with these characters. We could sit here and talk all night about what each character brought to the story and how well they've been developed and all that. But like the story itself, like it's very like it's a huge world. Like we're now like because we also we're getting Mbessa bringing in possibly an army to fight. She's asking her daughter Mel. There's just like there's a lot of storylines. Yeah, because I remember Platoon is you remember this. There was a lot of storylines, and we were like getting worried because like it felt like too much was happening at once.
Yeah, it's kind of I think a function of the structure, because I remember when I first watched Arcane, it took me about a year, I think, to finish it. I saw 1 through 3, and obviously it's such a definitive ending to that, effectively prologue, that the fact that 4 and 5 dropped the pace again, I think at the time just didn't quite keep my attention in the same way, and I had more pressing things I had to do. Obviously, having gone back and seen the whole thing, you can kind of see the point, but it might be partly structural, the fact that 1 through 3 work as a self-contained story. 4, 5, 6 doesn't really work in that same way. It's not bookended in the same way. It just goes straight on. So you've got effectively a 6-episode arc following a 3-episode arc, which naturally will feel a little bit more diffuse. And it may have benefited it had a stronger end, or like a more clearly defined second act, perhaps would have helped. But I mean it's still like faulting it for something that almost anything else fails to do. It's still great to watch. It's just that might be part of the reason for the disconnect.
Well, yeah, not to keep bringing up Star Wars, but you can actually look at it very similar to the OT, where A New Hope you can watch as a self-contained thing. You need Empire and Jedi together. Empire doesn't really end. You need Jedi. I think the final 6 episodes are in that same vein. You need the full 6.
Well, when you're talking about that, because they didn't even know if they were going to do Return of the Jedi. They wanted to kill off Han Solo because they didn't know if he was actually going to come back. So like that's kind of different. But I mean, getting into this, I think with this, like there's just we were talking about like how many storylines are starting to come into it, and it just was like taken away from the original storylines that we were invested in. And it was just like becoming a little too much, and it was becoming too busy, and we were like, okay, what's happening over here? And then it got really the pacing got really frantic, which was really, really good, but it was like we're losing a lot from this story over here. Like we had a really in-depth conversation with Mel and Jace, or Mel and Mbessa, or Victor and Jace, and then right away you're zipped over to like Silco and Savika, and like it was just kind of all like sometimes like a little too much. And Nia, your thoughts when you're watching it? Like, I'm just curious. Like,
yeah. So for me, the tragedy of the show is that most of the characters are trying to solve similar problems in that they're trying to figure out how to best approach the dynamic between Piltover and Zaun, but they're going about it through different and often conflicting methods. So you've got Silco, who wants to liberate Zaun by pioneering their industrialization, but he's also corrupting his people with Shimmer. Vander thought that a fragile peace was better than conflict. Jace believes in innovation would reduce the friction between both sides, but he loses sight of the suffering of people in Zaun. Vi thinks that the only way to liberate Zaun is by detaching Silco as the head. So you've got all of these dynamics coming in. You understand the motivations and goals of each of these characters, and when it all sort of culminates in the actions of Jinx doing what she does in the final episodes, it's just a tragedy because they'd almost found a way to finding peace.
I think that the first 3 episodes and the setting everything up, there's not a lot of overlap between Piltover and Underground City. That they exist, but they don't, for I mean, if you're in Zaun, then the only time that you really see anybody from Piltover is when the enforcers show up to crack down on, to find something or whatever, and then they're essentially gone. You have, the character of Grayson, which is really the only character that you have that kind of straddles both worlds. Piltover doesn't, they're operating and they don't really care. other than when there's a problem on their side. The 4, 5, and 6 is showing that they're actually connected, and it's because of the Jace does he creates the transport portals and
Hex tech
and the
all
hex
that.
tech in general,
Yeah.
and at the same time you have people from Zaun starting to hit harder, making more of a problem with Piltover. That's when Piltover starts caring about them. That's when we start to see how these two are actually connected in a meaningful way and that their fates are intertwined. It takes a while to show how they're intertwined because the complexity is at multiple levels and everybody kind of has a different view of the problem. But they're not just focused on the two cities, right? Jace isn't really thinking about Zaun when he's doing the hex tech stuff, right? He's just locked into his own personal ambition and this idea of, and I can help Piltover become even greater, and all these people will benefit and all that. Then the reality of it starts to impact, right? When we left Zaun after Vander died, we just know that Silco has taken Jinx and kind of taken over, and then we see him running essentially the whole thing, and he's done a deal similar to what Vander did, right? But he does it with Marcus. But then we start to see that Jace is the driving component that causes these two to collide. His overreaction, he's immature, he overreacts, and again, he's all about safety. And I can have change, I can change the city, but there won't be any pain, right? And the thing is that when you birth is always involves pain and a bit of blood. There's a reason that one of the episodes with Silco is like, what is it, the necessary amount of violence? And when he's talking to Vander, right? It's like, yeah, I'm going to do some changes. Of course there'll be violence because changes are going to happen. That's what happens. That's almost all of the characters and all of the themes that run through this is there was a status quo, however imperfect it was. People have decided to change it, and then there are roll-on effects. And the thing about change is that you can't predict its outcomes in a clean way. And that's what's happening across the board is once these changes start rolling, it starts affecting both sides. And you need to know these people and care about them in order to make that work. So I don't have any problems with the episodes 4 through 9.
No, I think the second act, because it's a time skip, right? So you see where some of the characters have gotten to. I mean, just for instance, when it's brought to Jace's attention that there was a prisoner that had been set free, he didn't care whatsoever. He's like, oh yeah, it's under control. But his focus was so set on Victor and Hextech that everything else wasn't really a priority, because there's so much that could be done with Hextech. And you start to see a little bit of that with the fight scene between him, Vi, and in the Undercity, right? So like there's a lot of other badass stuff that he can do that you haven't even seen yet, which is great. But you start to see more of the problems that Victor is facing, within himself. He's tampering more with the dark side of Hextech, and I'm not going to spoil anything, of course, but man, y'all ain't ready for what happens to Victor. Man, like it's
really,
but you understand why he's
worried
doing that,
about
right?
that, Nick. I have been
I'm not
worried
saying a
about
word,
that.
but I can tell you what though, like it seeing Victor's journey through this season again is one of those things where to see him from a young boy and aging later and being best friends with Jace and what they have to do for each other, like as Jace tells Mel, like he goes to her because he's in a rock and a hard place. And so there's this moral dilemma for Jace that he has to try and figure out. But again, we see his own confrontations between the council and Heimerdinger, right? Like to see that Heimerdinger was removed from the council was a bit of a shock to me, because that was something that was originally created. There was no lore of that in the game about his involvement, and the fact that he Heimerdinger gets involved with Echo. And I mean, I love the fact that Echo was in this show, because Echo definitely has more of a role to play in this series, and I think we'll have bigger role in season 2. I think I saw someone in the chat say he was underused, and I definitely agree. That's why when I saw him in the show, I'm like, this is dope. Okay, Echo's badass, and I mean, I don't have a problem with the second act, really. I think it set up Act 3 to be a lot better, and just really establish the problems that each of the characters were facing. Like, I feel like this is like the second act is all about like their new identities and like the consequences that they're all facing in that point, and how are they going to deal with them? How are they going to come out from them? Like, what are they doing? Like, Vi is extremely traumatized. What is she going to do? Right? Like, we're not going to see Vi change until season 2, and we know that's going to happen literally because of the cliffhanger that we're all left with. Like, that is seriously changing a lot.
So the T Pro 83 said Jason Victor's actual backstory I would have liked portrayed. Sad the show disrespects the lore. Is there discrepancies between what the the original written text was before the show was made, or do you know? Or
I mean, I think we're going to see that in season 2, personally.
Okay, gotcha.
But,
never mind then.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that in season 2, and I think we could probably surmise why. Right? Like, I mean, Jace has no idea what happened to Sky yet in episode 8. So
that hurt. That was rough.
Yeah,
that was rough.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I think one of the things that this show does so well is, you actually feel something for these characters, and it's obviously animated. And I'm sure a lot of us out there have watched plenty of anime, and there's been plenty of characters in anime that have hit someone in like some way, but that was rough. I mean, that was pretty crappy to see, and obviously it did affect Victor in that moment, but Jace has no idea what happened yet, and I'm assuming he's going to find out in season 2, and I think that's what is going to start that rift between them, and there's going to be some sort of betrayal between the two of them.
It's going to be interesting. Bo Jangles has a question here. Okay, I got to know, what did you guys think about Heimerdinger? I was pulling my hair out every time he failed to explain why he was against magic. He just basically only said, "Trust me, bro."
I think that's the intended effect, though, right? I mean, you are supposed to find that incredibly frustrating because you're supposed to sympathize with Jace's response to that. He finds it incredibly frustrating. This is the side of the story which is very much focused on the way revolutions naturally form. You have the Ancien regime, which is very set in its ways, which believes that its authority, its knowledge, its wisdom, its tradition, and its experience must all just be accepted because they've seen it before. And in becoming so comfortable with their own experience, they can actually forget how to explain it to people. It's supposed to be frustrating that Heimerdinger is unable to explain it, but also that, Jace is not really willing to hear an explanation. Because Heimerdinger is technically correct in experimenting with the arcane magic is incredibly dangerous. And Heimerdinger knows it's dangerous. He's seen it and he's experienced it. But you can't transmit that experience to other people, particularly to younger people. It's why, revolutionary movements will always emerge in very ossified conservative societies, and they'll make mistakes. And then 100 years later, the same thing will happen again. And it's happened so many times in succession that you think, well, surely someone by now has learned to solve this problem. But the show is quite astute in the way that it understands the psychology of revolution, which is that actually this is as much a failure of understanding from the old and the young combined. And there's nothing really you can do to stop it.
Well, it's sort of alluded to in the show as well that their previous tampering with magic led to the near destruction of their civilization, right? Yeah. So, and for me, Heimerdinger, he's highly knowledgeable. He's very cautious. He values safety and stability over rapid progress. He's patient. He's thoughtful. He's very risk averse, and that's why his wisdom often clashes with Jace's ambitions. He's deeply committed to protecting Piltover from what is alluded to have happened in the past. And those things were, as he sort of alludes to, caused by unchecked innovation, which is what Jace represents. And that's why there's that the fighting and bickering between both of their points of view.
And it's why
Yeah.
having him exiled from the council is so important, because it's
Oh,
the
yeah.
first time in however long it has been for him that he's gone out into the streets that he thinks he's taking care of, and he sees how the other half lives. It's kind of a comment, I suppose, on the utility, but also the faults in stigma, like the use of stigma in establishing certain moral presumptions which people live by, and if everybody agrees to live by them, then everything works. But the minute someone comes along and questions them, if you forget how to argue for them rationally, then people will not accept that, and things will fall apart, inevitably so.
Right. It just becomes because that's the way we've always done it, and that's not a convincing argument. The one thing that I very much appreciate about Heimerdinger is that his age. He's one of the founders of Piltover, right? That before that we had the chaos of magic and sorcery and all that, and that he's there. When you see him interacting with like Jace or Victor, whatever, he's thinking in a much longer term, right? That you're dealing with youth and not just young people, but people that don't live nearly as long as he does. So he has a much more gradualist kind of view of things, and if he's trying to preserve a society, then he's correct. There's this new thing that's great. In a generation or two, we'll be able to actually handle this because we'll gradually, we'll be very cautious about its introduction and do all these things. The pushback is that and I think I can't remember if it's Jace or Victor. Actually says something, like that's easy, for you to say on the slow down because you're 300 and some years old. The time is a different concept for Heimerdinger.
Well, he's absolutely sorry. Go on, Goodwin.
Well, and I like Heimerdinger as the embodiment of history and gradualism. And then when he's shockingly to him removed from the council, and then he goes down and he sees how the people who have these short lives actually live that he's been in charge of, and it's like, oh shit, I've misunderstood a whole lot of things.
I really like that scene when Jace and Victor are showing him their new devices, the gauntlet and the laser that Victor's using. And you're seeing both sides play out. He's extremely cautious. He says we need to wait 10 years. You can understand Victor's frustration because he doesn't have 10 years.
Right.
But at the same time, you see the laser cut the tail of the pet.
The dog.
Goes to show that, he's absolutely right. Because I think a few scenes after that is when Jinx steals the gemstone. For me, ironically, while I think they were wrong to kick him from the council, from a character perspective, it was absolutely necessary for him to gain perspective that was missing.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, even Jace knows it's morally wrong. It's just it's correct for the efficiency of what he believes is the right move for Piltover. Like that's actually probably my favorite thing about Jace in this whole show is he struggles and nearly every interaction he's in to balance the logical versus what is the morally right thing to do. I think he has to walk a greater tightrope than anyone else in this show, which is what makes him one of the best characters.
He's naive, and he makes naive decisions.
Yep. Yes.
And so Silco has this drug thing. We just go destroy it, and then he realizes, there's actually people there, and I ended up killing a kid. And when he eats the consequences, then it's, I need to reflect or whatever. But he keeps, because he doesn't have the experience, because he doesn't, have the long view like Heimerdinger, and doesn't have the political understanding of Mel. He sees the thing and is like, I want to do this thing, and I'm willing to take shortcuts. That always ends so well for everyone. When it's let's just suspend all normalcy because I want to achieve this goal, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's classic.
But
And
he's
justify
also
the mean stuff.
Exactly.
Does actually do very. I mean, it is effectively all because of Jace that Piltover becomes what it does post time skip. So, I mean, I'm not saying that makes it justifiable, but like, Jace isn't a normal dude.
Right.
Yeah, but he embodies that. Is it Google's motto is move fast and break stuff? Like
no, that's just a general.
Was it just general Silicon Valley
thing,
approach?
Yeah.
But it's that approach. It goes back to Douglas Adams's rules for technology. Everything that exists when you're born is natural. Everything that's invented between 15 and 35 is brilliant, and you can get a career in it. And everything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things.
Yes.
Jace is the guy he sees the immense potential of technology to transform everybody's lives, and it does. It makes a huge number of people richer, more comfortable. The city is wealthier, but only some of them. Progress necessarily entails leaving some people behind in this particular world. It's a kind of zero-sum game. The long view is the one that says, no, we have to distrust progress to court, which has its own problems, because then you have to ask, who are you doing this in favor of? And that's Heimerdinger going out into the city and realizing that his great order that he's been preserving has only worked for some people. Jace approaches that from the other direction. This massive transformation, which he sees as being so great and beneficial, is beneficial to some people, but it's also incredibly risky. And those two points of view will never, ever really be squared. At least that's the perspective the show takes in season 1. You can't cross effectively an age divide between those two things in the attitude to progress.
Yeah, and then again, also that again, whenever change occurs, there's going to be disruption, and it's going to cause problems. Jace is that like kind of the techno optimist with I made a thing, and then it'll be better for everyone. How? Well, he doesn't know. He just because I'll have the thing, right? But it necessarily has consequences that aren't so good, and you see it throughout. Again, this is through all the characters. That the people that recognize that change has inherent risk and could lead to violence and things like that. Some are willing to do it, some are not. And that's the conflict that you keep seeing with people. Is Heimerdinger is risk averse and believes in gradualism. Jace is very much let's take the risk, but he doesn't know the consequences because he's naive, right? Bander is someone who decides I want to maintain status quo because I have tried to do radical change before, and I've seen the bodies laying on the bridge, and I have things to lose. I don't want to do that. Silco, on the other hand, has kind of always been his own island, and so he's always everything for the revolution or whatever, right up until he gets a daughter, and then it becomes a little more. They're going to give me everything, but I have to give up my daughter. No, I'm not willing to do that. Right, so everybody kind of goes through that, and it's the you have set little changes that have happened, and not so little changes, necessarily are going to have consequences that keep rolling that you cannot predict because societies are complex.
Nick had me look up this. Now, what are we looking at? This debonair.
It's a. That screenshot reminded me of that J skin. It's one of the skins in the game. Debonair Jace. Obviously, you can see he's a lot older because he's got the gray streaks in his hair. But
interesting.
I have to say, one thing that Riot has always done well is creating character skins for every character. I mean, whoever does their artwork is just amazing. Like, they used to do these videos when new champions would come out, and like they would show like a time lapse version of how they create it, and it's just so cool for the characters to come to life in that degree. So that screenshot reminded me of this character.
It's also reminding me of the annoying hammer scene, though, which is still one of my least favorite developments in the show. It's the only time I look at it and think, oh yeah, this is based on a video game.
Yes.
I don't know if I'll rewatch it and have a different opinion, but I remember watching it the first time thinking, this shouldn't have really happened. This isn't where he should be. It's silly. Like, there were cleverer things you could have done. This is obviously fan service.
Yeah, I agree. And to be honest, I'll agree with you there. Like, I wanted to see him use the hammer, but not in the extent of where he switches it up to the gun mode. I wanted to see him, knock some heads with it as a hammer. You would, but the gun part, it's interesting.
It's when it's become video game silly, and I remember when you guys were covering that episode, chat was at war because you essentially had like half of them going, "This is stupid," because they didn't play the game and the fan service landed like a wet fart, you know, and then the other half are like, no, this has to happen because this is a cool thing and it's in the game or whatever. It's like, this sucks. Stop it. Hammer gun is the dumbest idea I've heard in a long time.
I brought up Mbessa because I'm going to assume that we're going to start getting in. We're going to see her a lot more in the second season.
I hear somewhere Andrew being very excited about Muscle Mommy being shown.
Yes, he loved the Muscle Mommy
Mm-hmm.
because she wanted the technology for the war that she has, or they're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming that we're going to see that in second season. Because if not, then that was kind of a waste of a, wasted dialogue, wasted conversations. And also, Rossi, thank you, buddy, for gifting a Gucci Gang membership. Appreciate that. Thank you. Good to see you, Rossi. Yeah, always good to see you, Rossi. Appreciate you, bro. Yeah, so like I don't know where they're gonna go with season 2, because like it ended off with a kind of a cliffhanger with the rocket launcher from Jinx going into the council, and we saw Mel at the end there. Any kind of speculations? Anyone want to make any guesses what we're going to see here? Any predictions?
I do want to say
Not
one
fair.
thing.
Nick knows. He's got inside information.
Yeah.
I want to hear y'all's theories first.
I think, well, so first of all, I want to kind of step back and appreciate Jinx as the embodiment of chaos. That when change rolls, right? Again, you're letting a genie out of the bottle. You don't know what it's going to do, and everybody thinks that
in this case.
we've got a piece. You know, we with the council is voting. Oh, it's going to be great. We're going to have a piece, and then here comes the chaos that, in many ways, you created, but didn't realize is now launching, shark missile at you, and you're gonna have a decapitation of the leadership. I think Jace will survive, and I think that Jace will harden. That it really will turn into a war between the Piltover and those who want to have Zaun. I think Echo is an interesting third way. That they're essentially trying to stay out of both of the out of the way of both sides, and kind of forge their own independent path. I think he's going to have to make some choices.
I mean, that's going to be one of the things that leads me to think Mbessa plays a very prominent role, and there'll be some parable about militarism and the militarization of this technology, because season 1 draws quite heavily anyway on like the consequences of industrialization. It draws on the French Revolution. It's focused at the moment on the social conflict that progress entails. But obviously, the place to go with that is at least partly industrialization in the mechanization of warfare and things like that. And if you've established Echo as effectively the pacifist third way kind of, we're going to try and Switzerland our way out of this problem, you need an alternate point of view. And Mbessa is already established as being militaristic anyway. There is a power vacuum. The city has been violently attacked, so you will see like a result in favor of war and like violently cracking down on the Undercity. So I would expect those two to be set against each other, much more so than you might expect, because they've never met. But I think they will probably represent two poles in terms of reaction to the final events of season 1.
Interesting.
Go
ahead, Leon.
The only sort of prediction I have is that obviously it sets it up in a very the final shot is like the rocket is dead on for Mel's face. I don't think they're going to kill the character off. I really don't, because there's the whole, because we talked about with her mother, talked about the brother being in the war. We're going to see, again, I agree that we'll probably see the militarization of the weapons to be used, or sorry, the weaponization of the technology to be used. I do think that we're going to see some sort of very scarred, disfigured, destroyed version of Mel that somehow survives, and that's going to endear Jace and I always blank on Mel's mother's name. I apologize, but Mel's mother together. But we're also, that's going to harden her sort of manipulation of Jace as well. I think it's going to fundamentally change her. So, point is, I don't think we're getting the character death that the cliffhanger leads us to believe.
I think that just based on where the rocket was and how close it was to Mel, she is going to die. It's going to harden Jace, get him to spearhead a war between Piltover and Zaun, which will completely undo whatever peace work he was trying to achieve with Silco. And by the very fact that Mel is gone, I think Mbessa is going to be part of that conflict as well. Maybe even a tit for tat, like Mbessa will help him win the war or fight the war against Zaun in return for advanced weaponry that she can use in her war.
The loss of Mel would draw those two characters together.
Absolutely.
I don't think she needs to die for that to happen. I really don't. I think you can do more with her character, and just a maiming or a destruction of who Mel is as a character without killing her would serve the same, if not better, purpose, because you still have her around to advance the story further. I don't think she needs to die. And I'm not even saying this for my sympathy for the character because she's a fucking hottie. I actually do not think the character needs to die for things to work.
I think she does need to die in order to get to push Jace and Mbessa together.
Well, here's the because I think it's coming into a full circle. Like you're having these characters start off experience death, and then you bring in like naive and privileged characters like Jace and Caitlyn, not experience what everyone else in Zaun, like our main characters, Jinx and Vi experience. I think we're gonna second season. I think we're gonna see Caitlyn and Jace become hardened and have that trauma and experience because that's the whole point, right? Is Jinx wants them to feel her pain, so they're gonna feel the pain and the loss of Jace's mother, Mel, Caitlyn's mother, and everyone else involved.
Yeah, this is going to be Piltover's War of the Bridge.
What does Investa have to fight for if Mel dies? Because Investa was effectively asking Mel to come back, bring the technology with you, but also to come back after exiling her. So what is she really to fight for if she loses her other child? She already had son die off screen. If she has her other child die, then what's Investa's? Well, she's got no more kids. She got no more progeny to take over her kingdom.
No, what she has is Piltover.
Yeah,
she has Piltover and she has tech, and oh, by the way, vengeance.
Yeah.
I don't think she wants Piltover. She's far too proud of her own lineage, of her own land, of her own status. She doesn't really see an interest in controlling Piltover. She just wants their tech.
She will have no one to hand her lands to.
Bingo, bango, bongo. No, that's why I think that Mel will live. That's why I think Mel will be a changed character.
No, that Mbessa becomes much less interesting because she's going to go back and deal with her stuff or whatever. Mm-hmm. Mel dying that causes substantial character changes in development with both Jace and Mbessa, and that they work together.
I guess we shall see in a couple of days.
We shall see. Next week we'll see. We'll be here, same time, same place, 10:00 Eastern. We'll be doing season 2 episode. Like they're breaking it up into 3 episodes. They're doing the acts, right? First week we get the first 3. That's what I've heard too. So yeah, we'll be doing episode 1.
It's going to wrap by November 27th, so they would have to be doing it that way.
Yeah, we'll do episode 1 next week, and I'm looking forward to it.
Let's go.
We'll do a quick around the horn here and see where everyone's going to be for this weekend and going into next week. Anything that you want to promote, Mr. Goodwin? What you got going on?
Oh, I'll be on tomorrow. We'll be on B-Sides on Adam Gray's B-Roll Stage channel. I have no idea what kind of horrible movie he's going to make me watch, but I'm sure it'll be terrible and my suffering will be epic. Otherwise, I don't think I've got anything other than Sunday with Wayfair Project. We do Earworms. It'll be the 2nd episode of Blade Runner and the music of Vangelis being used in that movie. And then we'll be rolling otherwise. We got Primal on Tuesday, and definitely we'll be back here next week.
Nice. Nick, what you got going on there, bro?
Tomorrow, got a double stream to do. I got one with Nadia and company to talk about From. and then got a late night stream with Badger.
Oh yeah,
time will be on Badger's show. So it'll be 12 o'clock Eastern, my time, and then he's lucky because it's only 9 o'clock his time over. So, but yeah, and I'm looking forward to it. That'll be fun.
And of course, Platoon, thank you again for joining us. What you got going on? I know you're a busy man, and I always appreciate when you join. And it like I mentioned earlier, it just kind of hit me in the feels like how I started this thing, and it was really cool to see you join tonight. So
it's great. There are not very many panels when you get to sit down and just have a really thorough, in-depth exploration of everything in terms of character, plot, world building, theme, and on such a great show. So I'm looking forward to being back. As for what's coming up, I don't really know. I'm kind of sitting on another Rings of Power thing, but I'm bored of it, so I might just not bother. Gladiator 2 is coming. I'll wait for that, but I think I'm back on B-Sub on Monday if Cynic is back. Otherwise, nothing too much happening.
Nice. And yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into season 2. Leon, thank you for joining us, Leon. What you got going on there, brother?
No, first of all, no, thank you for inviting me. I'd love to do it. Happy to do it. Cannot wait for season 2. This is, like I said, literally surreal considering you got me to watch the show. And man, now I'm very excited to watch season 2 from the jump as opposed to like a year and a half later, whenever it was. This is, it's going to be an experience. Normally tonight, for those of you that hadn't heard, normally tonight would be that crime of the month starting in 15 minutes. Unfortunately, our dear Foxy Moxie fell under the weather. So, we're just going to postpone the show. We'll be doing it the third Thursday of the month like normal. And then my show tomorrow, Neon Leon. Saturday will be SNH, and then we'll take it from there. We'll see what happens. Monday is going to be a very awesome episode of Countercast, but that's a ways off. Beyond that, just enjoying being here, enjoying hanging with my friends, talking movies, talking music, talking whatever it is that comes our way in terms of nerd culture. It's not all negative, folks. You got shows like this, you got really positive video games out there. It's not all bad stuff, and you got to really appreciate the good when it comes. So thank you again.
No problem. And of course, my brother Niet, how you doing? And what you got going on?
Doing good, bud. Thank you for having me on. I really love this show, and I'm looking forward to season 2 next week. So I'm going to be on Nadia's stream covering From, along with Nick tomorrow, and on Saturday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're covering Predator 2 on my channel. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yes. And then, and is that it? Is that it? There's nothing more?
Oh, of course. And Late Night with the Gooch the day after.
Yeah. For me, it's the weekend. I'll be on Niet on Saturday. Looking forward to doing Predator 2. So much talk of guns and cocaine, and then we'll be talking late night with
two great things that go great together.
Yeah. Well, I'm always on Badgers and Nerd Wars. So you can catch me on there. But Late Night with Gooch, that show has become something I don't know. It's just blown up, and we're having a blast. So this Sunday we're having Project Egg Roll is with us this Sunday, so we should have a lot of fun with that one. So come join us for that. And then of course, the animation block Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So Tuesday, Primal episodes 5 and 6. Wednesday, we're getting into the Star Wars Micro Clone Wars by Genndy Tartakovsky. So we're looking forward to that. And then Thursday, we're going to be right here doing season 2, episode 1 of Arcane. And I'm looking forward to it. I want to thank these guys for joining me. I appreciate it a ton. And all you guys in the chat, love you. And I appreciate all you guys as well. You guys effing rock. And as always, I end my shows with stay Gucci. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Cheers,
See you
everyone.
guys.